Hello, I'm John. In this lesson I'm going to introduce you to the pawns and how they move. So now if we look at the board in front of me, we have a line of pawns here and a line of pawns here. Pawns are the weakest piece on the board. They can't go backwards, they can't go sideways, they can only move in a forward direction. So on its first move a pawn can move out 1 or 2 squares. After that it can only move 1 square at a time. I'll just take these off for the moment. So one square at a time, and if it reaches the end of the board you can turn it into a queen, a rook, a bishop or a knight. Most people go for a queen, and this is where the new queen would go. It goes on what's called the queening square. That's where the pawn reaches the end of the board, and that's where the pawn turns into the new piece, which nearly always is a queen. Okay, so that means you could have up to 9 queens on the board. If each pawn reached the end, you could turn it into a queen, and you would also have the queen you started with, which is 9 queens. Now, I've never seen that in practice. However, it's possible. Okay, so back on the board again, pawns can go 1 or 2 squares on their first move. Okay, if it goes 1 square on its first move, it can never go 2 squares after that. The only chance it gets to go 2 squares is on its first move. Okay, so let's play a game for the moment. Right, so now it's white's turn. Even though pawns move forward, they cannot capture what's straight ahead. This pawn cannot take this one, and this one cannot take this one. Okay, now let's suppose a black pawn had been here. White pawns, any pawn can capture 1 square diagonally in a forward direction. So this pawn could take this one like this, or if there had been a piece here, it could take it like this. So pawns capture 1 square diagonally. Let's surround this white pawn with black pawns, and we'll move these aside for the moment. Okay, so this is the pawn which is moving this way, the black ones are going this way. So this pawn cannot take this. Pawns are not allowed to take in a forward direction. However, the pawn could take this one, or the pawn could take this one. Now, if there's nothing here or here, this pawn is stuck. It cannot move. It can't go diagonally unless it's taking something, and it can't go here diagonally unless it's taking something, and it's not allowed to take straight ahead, even though that's the way it normally moves. So pawns move forward but capture diagonally. Okay, now for a little exercise, a little simple game that you can play. It's called the pawn game. That's where each player is playing with pawns only. If you can get a pawn to the other side first, you win. It's very simple. It's not real chess, but it's an exercise to play with the pawns. So first pawn to the other side wins. So let's see how we might play. This will be a sample pawn game. White starts. Black goes here. They can't take each other. Let's suppose white goes here. Black's turn now. This pawn can capture diagonally like this. Let's say white goes here. This pawn can go forward, or it can capture like this. Let's capture. Now this pawn could take this, but let's say it doesn't. Black moves on. Let's say white moves another pawn. And now the pawn has reached the end of the board and black has won. In a normal game this would be a queen, or a rook, or a bishop, or a knight. But for the pawn game, first pawn to the other side wins. Okay, now this is an exercise you can do. Reset all your pieces, all your pawns I should say. Set them all up from the start and try and play this pawn game. First pawn to the other side wins. Okay, thank you for watching.